last time I was there, they had this Indonesian coffee. And I hadn't had Indonesian coffee, and it was like different from anything I'd had. I loved it, so I'm getting that again.
Their hot chocolate is also
really?
amazing. They have a couple different kinds. It's
Just a couple days ago, I was like, I haven't had hot chocolate in a while.
Do it. It's awesome. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, this is it?
This is what they do.
Yeah.
They tell us. Yeah. All right, I'm here with Kumail Nanjiani from The Big Sick, brand new movie. Not only are you starring in it, you wrote it, you and your wife, and an absolutely amazing story. How long did it take for you guys to finalize this story?
Right now, it's been 5 years since we first had the meeting to be like, let's try and make it a movie.
Yeah.
So it's been 5 years since then.
It seems like every couple thinks that they have a story that's worth a movie. Like, you guys legitimately have one. Like, at what point did you get to that? You're like, we could totally write a movie about this. Two of my friends, local people here in town, they met because he got into a helicopter crash and he was a newsman and she was an anchor.
Whoa.
And like that's how they like met, and that was the beginning of their love story. I'm like,
wow,
that should be a movie.
Yeah.
Your story with your wife, The Big Sick, that should be a movie. Like, when do you get to that point?
Well, you know, going through it, it's very, very, it was emotionally very intense.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we got through it and it was done, and it was a few years had gone by. I would say about 5 years had gone by, because now it's been 10 years. So about 5 years had gone by where I was the first one. I was like, hey, I think maybe we could try and do something with this. And she was a little more resistant at first, because she was like, you know, it's a very personal thing. It's weird to have everybody know our story, which it is weird. But
do you think she was weirded because she would be in a coma most of the time?
yeah, she was like, well,
it's
I'm
not even my story. It's your story.
It's your story. I was like, yeah, it is my story, but you can be in it.
You'll be really good.
I want to mention, people listening or watching, there is a coma in it, but it's a comedy.
Oh, yeah.
It's a comedy. You know, that's the hard thing about this. It's like living through it was very intense.
Yeah.
And then when you describe the movie to people, it sounds like a very serious, heavy-handed movie.
Yeah.
It's not.
No.
It is a comedy.
It's hilarious.
It's funny, yeah. And so for us, that was the big challenge.
So when people recognize you on the street, because you've done a ton of other work, I remember the Franklin Bash days, and I was a gigantic fan of that. Does anybody actually come up and say, like, I love you in Franklin and Bash?
You know, it happens every now and then. It does happen. It's mostly now, people call me Dinesh from Silicon Valley. Yeah. But you do run into Franklin Bash fans. I was just in Atlanta. I was hanging out with my wife, and this guy came up to me and was like, hey, you're friends with Jared and Peter. And I was like, no, you have me confused. He's like, Jared and Peter, they're lawyers. I was like, oh, wow, that's right. Yeah. So you do run into people that like that.
Actually, me and one of my co-hosts, we loved watching it. And then when it went off the air, we were so sad about it.
That was my first big regular job. I had that job for 3 years, and I learned how to do everything on that show. And those guys were so great. I still talk to those guys.
Well, let's get a reunion.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I'm on.
Let's get something happening.
Yeah.
All right, Kumail Nanjiani, thank you so much for the time. The Big Sick, the brand new movie about you and your wife. It's a heartfelt coma movie.
Yeah.
But really funny.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I should write slug lines.
I think that's good. That's the thing I always, whenever I talk to people, I'm like, but it is funny. It's funny.
I swear.
Don't be turned off.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.